via the Zoom.
I just started the record to the cloud. I forgot to start the recording, so I have to do that intro all over. No, I'm just kidding. So this is Ray Schroeder from University of Illinois Springfield. Those who didn't come to the live session will miss the intro. I'm going to try and turn up my volume on my phone if I can, and that's a maximum volume. So you all can hear him, right?
Yes.
If I set it down, Ray, again, why don't you say a few words, and I will make sure if I set this down, they can still hear you.
Sure. Let me.
Thumbs. They can. Okay, great. Yep.
Okay. I'm saying for many years I have been PowerPointless, with the emphasis on pointless, because I believe it's better to create a website that you can easily add to, that lives up on the web when you're sharing information of this kind. And so for us today, I'll call it just today, this evening on the prairies of central Illinois, I share with you AI in higher education, a meta site. So is that working, Kurt?
Can you all hear him okay?
Yeah, I can hear him.
Is it better if I hold it up here or not? It doesn't make a difference. It's okay? All right.
It's about the same.
About the same. All right. So Ray, we have many questions for you. And so I think we should just go ahead and start with the questions and have this be very student-centered and participant-centered, if that's okay. Ray's got 3 articles in the syllabus for this class. Ray might want to talk about one of those articles along the way, but why don't we start with a question from a student who's read your article? So who would like to start us off? Patrick?
Sure, you beat me to it. Here we go. Yeah, so
okay.
I thanks for joining us, Ray. I really liked your.
So he's saying thanks for joining us, Ray. I have to repeat everything, unfortunately. So just get to the question.
Okay. Some of his articles mentioned a lot of the potential benefits of new technologies like metaverse, Web3, AI for student learning. I was wondering, given the existence of those technologies, what does he think it is worth for students to learn? Not only the learning process, but the outcomes.
With all those technologies that are appearing in the metaverse, what's worth students to be learning? What should they be attending to and studying and learning about that will situate them well for the next coming decade?
Well, that's an excellent question. There are many. Certainly AI, certainly VR, augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, but it's a two-edged sword, because where we're going now with AI, and what I hope you read off of that meta site URL, I think you have, but it is sites, sites.google.com/view/AI-higher ed. And here's the point, is that today, students can, in 2 minutes, 1,000-word essay, original essay, written by AI. I did this as referenced it in one of my articles, and I destroyed it because I didn't want my boss to see that I could be replaced by AI. The topic was an original one, and it even came up with ideas I had not thought of. At the same time, and so I used part of this generative GPT-3 technology, so students can use AI. And it's not just students. We need to realize that in the workforce, that people will be using AI to write. So then why should we teach literature? Well, or composition? Well, there are good reasons for that, but we have to look at it in a different way. The same with DALL-E 2, DALL-E. That can write original artwork. And I have examples in the articles fantastic poetry that follows. You just say, I want to write like Alfred Ward Tennyson or Walt Whitman or Dickinson. And it will take that style and you tell it the subject and it'll write a couple of verses. You suggest what it might continue with, and it does it in almost flawless form. So how do we evaluate those students if they can do these creative things? And do we evaluate them? And so I'll take half a minute to go back to 1967. Kurt may remember that. Handheld calculators first came out. And all the math teachers were up in arms. We've got to ban them. We can't have them. Students will be able to just do math without long division and the like. And in 1974, programmable calculators came out. And oh boy, well, once again, a big brouhaha. We teach them a formula and we just have them calculated, but we're going to have to do more. And of course, in 94, the first smartphone came out. Now, it's hard to believe, but that's 26 years. But that smartphone gave you access to the world. And so we really need to rely more on authentic assessments. And that's something you may have talked about. If you haven't, you might look it up and discuss it. But as your graduates, as you're teaching, as your graduates go out to work, they're going to use AI. And so AI can help us in education, particularly through adaptive learning. And I'm happy to talk more about that. But I think I should pause here. And Kurt, if you want to go on to a question, or if you want me to talk about adaptive.
Yeah, and so I also will have you speak for a long period on the next question, because I noticed my phone's got 32%, and I'm going to get my charger. Gina just sent me a question right before class, and she says, here's a question. Dr. Schroeder mentions, I anticipate that meaningful models will appear in 2023. Large-scale implementations will continue through 2024. Widespread migration of business will initiate in 2025. In July 25, 2022 article on the metaverse and the Web 3.0, with the fast-paced changes in the internet, World Wide Web, and the metaverse, how do educators keep up with the changes or stay up to date on the technology and the teaching their students for their careers that don't even exist yet? What are your thoughts on that?
What a wonderful question. So thank you for asking that. A recent survey, one that I just promulgated on my curated reading list, came out and said 77% of the workforce of workers are looking to change, a majority of workers are looking to change jobs. And of those looking to change jobs, 77%, their first reason was not money, was not working conditions, was not benefits, it was professional development. And I happen to know a couple of Gen Zers, and they're in that same boat. They know their job is going to be outdated by the technologies that are being released. Yet regrettably, too many of our professors are teaching technologies that are 10 and 20 years old. So students come out barely prepared or unprepared for those jobs. And what we need to do is to stay up with it. Well, I offer a small token to all of you in the class. At the very bottom of that meta site, you'll see a number of daily updates that I push out on the topics of educational resources, on professional continuing ed, on higher ed in general, and all of them have technology hosts. And so what I do is, these are curated sure was a very, very lengthy reading list that Dr. Bonk has shared with you. But so what I suggest is these come out every day. And although I'm fully emeritus, I continue to work for a national association. And as part of that work, a couple of hours every day, scouring the web, journals, looking for trends, actually publishing myself, as you have seen some of those articles, had one come out today, in fact. But so all of those, I think, are probably useful. That is, use those curated reading lists, and they will lead you to even more resources. Because the true problem, as you know, is that it's a fire hose. It is coming so fast and so hard that one person can't keep up with it, and unless you can dedicate your work to it. And at this point, that's what I'm doing.
So Shaw Ying has a question for you. She's with us here. She had 3 questions she sent me. I'm going to ask the middle one of hers. I'll also add, Ray, do you know Judy Brown? Does that name ring a bell?
It vaguely does, but give me a context.
So she ran the Wisconsin ADL lab, Advanced Distributed Learning Lab, before Rovi had it. And Judy Brown had a weekly newsletter. It summarized all the articles, so I didn't have to read. I just went to Judy Brown's listing. The same thing. If you go to Ray Schroeder's pages, you will get updates on everything. There's another guy, Stephen Downs, who's got a blog called Old Daily. There's certain people that summarize, that curate the recent trends, conferences, articles that will help you be in tune with what's going on. And Ray is one of those people. So Ray, Shaw Ying, who was my TA last semester, she says, it is so impressive to view the online learning from an ecological perspective. The greater reduction in campus energy use resulting from massive online education during the pandemic accidentally caused that to happen. Then what are the potential difficulties or obstacles to enhance or keep the sustainability through blended and online approaches in these institutions after the pandemic is over? How do we keep reducing the carbon footprint? Ooh.
Yeah, and I mentioned one of the Inside Higher Ed articles. I think I've been enthusiastic about that for many years.
Can't hear him very well, Kurt.
Study how much carbon we save at our campus, but I wasn't able. It is a complex topic. Clearly, online and blended learning is much more environmentally sound. We create less pollution by far because we're not printing up our handouts, because we're not commuting to campus every day, because we're sharing the living accommodations with our family rather than replicating them perhaps in dorms or student housing. There are so many ways that online is advantageous. However, so in order to continue this, I think we're seeing it right now. It's interesting that I was going to say pandemic, but the pandemic's not over. So after the first 2 years of the pandemic, we have seen that students have begun to embrace online learning, such as many of you. And they found the advantages of asynchronous properties, or even synchronous, but at least that you don't have to drive to campus and get a parking space if you're an adult or continuing learner. So I think we're going to see continued savings. Nathalie from Chicago, she's at the university. It's a Catholic university. Nathalie, St. Xavier University. Thanks, Nathalie. She's got the same question. So I just want to jump in here while you're answering the question. She asks us in a different way. She says, the extent to which we can reduce or eliminate the use of buildings and use more sustainable alternatives will reduce energy costs in the campus footprint.
question is, the suggestion to eliminate the use of those buildings may be received with a backlash. Is the intention to eliminate, tear down these buildings? How do you steer the conversation with administrators and other people in high up mucky mucks and politicians that it's rather uneasy thing? And after you answer that, I think Edgar Leon in Puerto Rico will have a question, because he's been experiencing hurricanes and tropical storms and earthquakes and tornadoes and you name, and corruption and everything under the sun and moon has been happening in Puerto Rico. So these are mild issues compared to the ones he's got. So I'll go to Edgar next, but I want you to see if you can answer what Natalie's extension of that question.
Sure. And the administrators, I think, are really looking at a bottom line. And the near bottom line is enrollment, the number of students they can enroll. And then they look at what are the expenses. Clearly, this is less expensive to deliver because the maintenance on those buildings are very high. So how do you present it? You say, I have a local group that would like to lease that building for enterprise development, perhaps for a minority group, perhaps for startups in our field of technology, because they want to have a relationship with the university, access to some labs, but they need buildings in order to begin their startups. And so instead of using it for classrooms, we can actually generate revenue, and we wouldn't overcharge them, but we can generate revenue rather than only incurring costs. And right now, higher ed is in crisis. Our enrollments have dropped every year for the last 12 years in the United States. And that's reflected elsewhere. And they've dropped on campus. Well, total enrollment has dropped. But the only segment that has increased is online. And every one of those years, online learning went up. And it went up because it accessed a new market segment, returning learners who, in part because of technology, need to gain new skills and new knowledge in order to move forward with their careers. So it all blends very well. And I think Kurt might have been engaged in this. There's rather a personal secret mission that has a, I'll mention it here because of the nature of your class, that some of my very kind colleagues have obtained the requisite permissions to grant me an honorary doctorate. And
hey, you heard it first right here on this show.
All right.
That won't be till commencement, and it does require the BOT rubber stamp. But it has the president of the system, the chancellors, and the campus senate, everybody's approved. So, and they did that. One of the things, this all in secret, unbeknownst to me, but the point is this. They said, you know what? Ray Schroeder, for 25 years, launched and built our online program. It has brought in an average of $25 million a year for those years. And in many ways, for this small university, it has helped save the university, because without online, now half of our enrollments are online. It wouldn't have moved forward. So that was just one of the things, is that when you talk to administrators, the revenue from online is a significant additional revenue stream that many of them had not previously considered.
Ray, I'll have you in. I didn't know about that award, actually. Maybe I did hear a little hint of it, but can you tell them what Colors is before we go to Edgar's question? Just briefly tell them what Colors is, and you were in charge of it, and that was part of this online learning initiative.
Sure, I founded it. We have an Office of Technology Enhanced Learning, which is rather traditional role, but we morphed it into the center for online learning, research, and service. And I'll tell you, as you move forward into careers in higher ed, that's a three-part mission for faculty, right? Learning, teaching, research, and service. And so we created a unit with instructional designers and faculty developers that served faculty members in all aspects of their mission, what they had to do for tenure and promotion. And the synergy there was large. And I owe Harry Berman, in part, for his support. He was our provost back in the day when we launched that, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and so you're like Central Florida, that Chuck Zubin and Patsy Moskov. If nobody has heard of them, they might be on our reading list. You know them well, I'm sure. Yeah, and so Central Florida and University of Illinois Springfield were two, I guess, places you would go to benchmark what was happening in the area of online and blended learning. People went by the busloads to Orlando when they had conferences in Orlando. They'd go to the University of Central Florida by the busload just to see what was going on there. The university was growing so fast, the state didn't have money to support all the buildings, so they just had to rely on online and blended learning to keep going. I think Springfield had a little different story. It was the population, the demographics that they were working with and trying to address there, the older adults, right? Wouldn't you say?
Exactly. Looking at, and that's where we are now in higher ed, is that, maybe we can, maybe your class can hold up hands, whatever. How long do you think the average worker stays with an employer? I think it's 10 years, 15.
Probably less.
I stayed with the University of Illinois for 51 years. No, it's not 51. 4 years. 4.1 years is the average tenure of a worker in the United States with an employer. So not only have they moved up in a job, perhaps, but they leave that employer. And in doing so, they need retraining, upskilling. They need to build credentials, micro-credentials, for example, in order to be prepared to continue with their careers. And that's largely driven by the changing technology.
Yeah, and micro-credentials and so forth. We'll go to Edgar's question, and maybe you'll get to Dodsey. And I got a question here from Edward Queen, who says he loves hearing you speak at OLC events in the past. You have a fan. He's not with us here tonight, but he sent the question to me earlier. I got a couple people waiting to come and attend the session. Oh, I got my colleague Okwa Lee from grad school is joining us from Korea. Welcome, Okwa. Welcome, Bo's joined us as well. So we've got a couple extra people joining us here. Ray, I think we'll go to Edgar Leon's question from Puerto Rico. I'll interpret the question for you, Ray, after he asks it.
Okay. I basically had two of them.
He's got two questions for you.
One was, will the metaverse be able to translate
will the
into any
metaverse be able to
language?
Translate what?
Into any language for the
Into
benefit
any
of
language?
education?
And for any language and anyone around the world, and or what's the limitations in terms of translation within the metaverse? That's his first question.
Yes.
And the answer is no limitations. We had that back in 2006 with Second Life, an early version of the metaverse. So it's there. It will translate voice to voice, or voice to a different language text, or voice to a different language voice.
Okay.
And
So
my
Edgar,
second
second question,
My
Edgar.
second question, I'm thinking about the future, 10, 20 years from now.
Thinking about the future 10 or 20 years from now.
Will humans interact with robots in the metaverse?
Will humans interact with robots in the metaverse as well as in classrooms? I'll add the second half
correct.
to that.
That's correct.
Yes, this is really moving forward quickly. We have passed what one called the Alan Turing test, Turing, who was an early computer scientist. posited that that there would come a time when a person could not differentiate if they were communicating with another person, or with a computer, and we have already passed that by far. We have chat bots that have natural language, and particularly you'll see the readings on GPT-3, which is one of the current iterations of language assembly that are astounding. And so yes, we will have bots there. Will we be able to tell them from humans? Perhaps, perhaps not. And so we are coming to a singularity, as it's called, where computers will be able to marshal the knowledge of an average person and respond seamlessly to you.
Terrific.
Yeah, in The Economist this month, there is an article, Ray, called Humanoid Robots Are Getting Closer to Reality. Walking, talking machines act as guides, companions, and deliverers. If anyone liked that article, I'll send it to my class. Anyone else, just send me a note, and we'll go. I'm going to skip over to Edward Queen's question because it relates to Edgar's, but Edgar had a comment before I do that.
Yes,
Edgar,
yes,
what
I
did you
have
want
a
to say?
comment. Yeah, he was mentioning about the administration at the university level, and here, even though we have reduced the amount of teachers when they retire, professors, the administration stays the same or
So
gets
in
bigger.
Puerto Rico, they have people retiring in droves that are instructors, but administrators are still being replaced. They don't replace instructors, but they're replacing administrators. And this is a common thing, not just in Puerto Rico, but around the world. Do you have any offhand comments about that, Ray?
You know, it's interesting because the instructors remain our student-centered focus. That's the way that we best engage our students. Administrators don't do that.
No.
Administrators can come up with ideas and they can come up with funding, but what we need, instructors who engage students. Now, we can engage students more efficiently. And one of the things I write about in an Inside Higher Ed article, that came out probably a month ago, but it was one of my biggest challenges over those decades of teaching as a professor was teaching to a class of, say, 20 students. And there were students who knew the subject very well, students who didn't know it, and students kind of in the middle. And some of those who didn't know it were missing prereqs. And the problem was that inevitably I would aim at the middle. And that was unfair to both the ones at the top and the ones with lesser knowledge. And what adaptive learning does is it's AI that regularly assesses every few days the knowledge of the student on the topic of that module. And it identifies what's missing and directs the student to resources that will help them better understand that. That's something that I couldn't do when I was teaching 2 or 3 classes a semester. I mean, you know, just wrangling 50 students at different levels and different classes is more than I could do. I could intercede, I could help where help was needed, but I was not in a position to teach 5 levels within each class.
Yeah.
So Ray, we do have your article, Higher Ed, Meet GPT-3, We Will Never Be the Same. That's in the course syllabus. It's all his articles in Inside Higher Ed are free. You'll have to sign up for Inside Higher Ed, and that relates to Edward Queen's question. He's enjoyed hearing you, Ray, at OLC, Online Learning Consortium conferences and other events in the past. Thanks for sharing the references of Ray Schroeder with us. One quote that stood out for him is from your August 24th article. GPT-3 is stunning. It's a game-changing tool. If you are like me, you'll rethink your view of the future of higher education, research, publication, and the role of faculty and of students. My question for Dr. Schroeder is, or my questions, what impact will AI like GPT-3 have on the role of instructional designers, and how can learning environments be designed or redesigned to leverage the positive aspects of AI like GPT-3? So in terms of the skills and role of instructional designers and the environments that they create, what will be the impact?
It will have a very large impact. So let's dig into it. GPT-3 changes every day. It adds knowledge, it adds capabilities, it refines what it can do. It is constantly updating itself through, if you will, machine learning. It's out there in unsupervised learning on the internet. For example, GPT-3 was never taught, it's a generative system. It was not taught to do math. It taught itself to do math. It was out on the internet. Oh, this is division. Oh, these are X. And it taught itself how to do math as it was. So this is a tool that is constantly evolving throughout the semester. And instructional designers cannot have a one and done. You can't create a syllabus and go away, because it's, the knowledge and capabilities will continue to grow. So yes, it'll be important. I don't see it replacing instructional designers in general, but there's the old story about Jill Watkins. Kurt, do most of your people kind of raise your hand?
Well, yeah, Jill? Do you know Jill?
Watkins? Yeah, right. So Watson.
Watson. So if you took my spring class, R678 Emerging Technologies, you would have read about Jill Watson and the students at Georgia Tech who basically didn't realize that was a bot that they were interacting with. They were, the technology people had designed this bot to be pretty effective. And so that indicates that there's some hope in terms of giving students feedback that they feel is intelligent in a way, right?
And it was nominated for TA of the Year.
Yeah, it was nominated.
Asha Cole, the professor at Georgia Tech, now has a fully operable, I think it runs on Linux now, version for just over $10,000, which is really remarkable, because it took him, $300,000 or something to create the original on the Watson computer. But now, and this has been his goal all along, so that even middle schools, high schools, colleges, corporations could have teaching assistants that could answer both procedural questions and content questions.
Sheila Jagannath at the World Bank has a question. I'm sorry, Danzi, I'm going to jump to her. It addresses both India and Korea. But before we go to Sheila's comment or question, Bo has joined us. He's one of the students in the class from Purdue. We still let him in the class, even though he lives in Lafayette, and he raised the same kind of question, but a little differently. He says, I was reading Dr. Schroeder's article, Higher Ed, Meet GPT-3 will never be the same. He referenced a website called Copy AI. I was interested in it and what the ethical implications would be for utilizing AI to create academic or artistic works. It could be very simple for one to use these AI tools to then create very specific works and have it attributed to themselves. For example, I'm going to take Dr. Mike Carlin's class, R505, Don't Tell Him, and I was able to utilize it to do Copy AI to create an attached blog post, which I could use for his class. I won't do that because I'm ethical, but what about students who are? And he provided then this blog post that he didn't really write, AI did, how to teach and engage K-16 students in online learning. Dynamic lectures, get students talking, create small groups, on and on and on. It's probably better than most of my articles. Hosting field trips, keep it short and interactive, implement flipped classroom. What do you say to Bo? And Bo knows everything, right? So you've seen the commercial.
Okay, so great question. And I gave a presentation using this handout, the one at Google Sites, to the University of Central Washington a week ago Friday. And the faculty there were alarmed. And how are we going to keep them from using it? And how are we going to tell the difference? And how are we going to use it? And it really, you get to the point we have to, at some point, accept it, just as we accepted hand calculators, programmable calculators, cell phones, internet. We have to accept them and adapt to them. And so it becomes in part teaching the ability to most effectively use those tools. Because we see and this is what people in the workforce are seeing. Let's say I'm in marketing and I'm writing copy for a corporation. I realize, oh my gosh, they can get the copy for the new widget and the whole marketing plan done in 90 seconds. And I normally get 3 months. And they pay me, and they wouldn't pay extra if they had this AI. And so this is a revolution. In part, I'm happy I'm 73. But it's kind of, this is something we all have to confront and ride that way. And so the key is for us to know about it. Now, I mentioned the same in my article, I think, where I had it write an article, and then I quickly threw it away so my boss couldn't see it. And I short just a paragraph that copy.ai wrote, but it was a paragraph I had not thought of. And of course, I cited it saying, well, copy AI wrote this. I hadn't thought about how we need to teach about computer ethics. So, yeah, you're right. You're spot on.
So Christian, who always has questions, Christian Smeltzer from Indianapolis, has 3 for you, and I'm going to hold them for a second. Megan Harbach has a question for you, and Patrick, who's the first question, he's got several more for you. But I want to go to Sheila Jaganathan at the World Bank, and she says recently she's read about marriages happening on the metaverse in India. And then Korea has opened its first University of the Metaversion, reaching out to learning in Africa. And so what are the downsides of learning via the metaverse? What do you think some of the downsides will be? And again, I'm trying to, what's the question about leapfrogging the emerging world or lagging behind? Comments about that?
Good question. Well, I recall it was in 2007 that Second Life, and you might look it up, had their first marriage on Second Life. Beautiful event. And so those have existed in virtual worlds for however long that is. That's, 16, 17 years. So, yeah, we're going to see that. What do we lose with the metaverse? Very little, because you have all of the ancillary material. I recall back in the early days, I created a video stream and a student union version for UIS on Second Life Metaverse. And students their avatar could come in, they could choose a video, watch the screen, and speak to those avatars next to them who are watching the same screen. So you get the virtual presence like you do face-to-face, but as we were talking about before, you get the environmental economies of doing this electronically rather than doing it by traveling to engage one another. So there are enormous advantages to it, the instant translation possibilities, and the opportunity to reach out worldwide to others, not just those who happen to be in Bloomington or happen to be in Urbana or Springfield or, Lafayette. I love Purdue. My dad was a Purdue grad, but nevertheless, you don't have to be there physically.
Even though they just beat us up in football and are made the Big Ten playoffs. So Dodzy up in Canada has a similar kind of question. So I'll ask part of it and I'll let Dodgy jump in. He said, he's got two questions. One about his hopes and concerns on the metaversities, and one related to your recent LinkedIn post about the digital divide 2.0. What are your thoughts about the new divide in this era of the metaverse? Dodgy, you want to jump in and show your screen here for a second and add to that at all?
Thank you, Dr. Bonk, and thank you, Dr. Schroeder, as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was about to tell to unmute myself when you told me to repeat my name, but by the time I did it, you went to another person, so I didn't want to disturb you. Okay, so yes, I don't have anything to add to my questions. I think yes, hopes and concern about metaverse theory because it's a growing trend now.
With this growing trend, he has both hopes and concerns, and yes, like everybody else. So you want to elaborate a little bit on your hopes and your concerns, Ray, that address that.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, first, I want to reiterate it is so important that each and every one of us keeps up with the technology. With luck, we'll know 2 months before something big is going to happen as these events roll out. And we won't have a year's lead time. Things are moving too quickly. I think the advantages, when we look at the advantages, it pulls people closer together. It gives us access to the world. Information wants to be open, yes? And so if we keep these open, the world is open, quote Dr. Bonk. If we keep these resources accessible and open, like OpenAI developed GPT-3. So if we can make them free or near free, I think the whole world will be elevated and better connected. And that has all kinds of refreshing possibilities through understanding to minimize some of the hatred and war that we seem to always fight. So that's the good side. The bad side is it's going to turn education on its head. And what's going to happen is many universities will shake out. You may know that since 2005, 863 colleges have closed. Nearly 1,900 plus campuses have gone away. And all of these as part of this technology and economic at the same time challenge. So there's going to be a big change. And what we need to do is to take a fresh view of how best to help our learners, how best to share information, share advice, tutor our students, rather than lecture to them. You know, the lecturing isn't what education should be all about. It should be sharing information with mentors or interpreters who help those learners advance. And I think those are uniquely human. I mean, over time, over decades, we're going to see more AI do that kind of thing, but still, it's the human touch will retain value, I would say, for decades to come.
So Ray, we have 3 or 4 questions here left. There might be more in the chat window. I'm having a hard time monitoring that, but I want to before I go to Christian's questions, I want to open up to anyone who didn't have a chance to send me a question ahead of time. We've had a question that, and Megan has I have Megan's ready to go here, and a couple from Christian and one from Patrick. But does anyone else have, or does Sunmei have a question? She's my TA. Does anyone want to raise something before we move on?
No, I don't have any. Yeah, that's good. Already many people Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so Sunmei said we're okay. Rachel looks like she does have a question. So Rachel, I'll let you jump in.
I don't have a question at this time. Just great discussion and
She's just thanking you. Okay.
yeah, and just saying it's Second Life. One of the things that's interesting about these kind
While
of
we think for a moment, let me restate. Make sure I would like to make sure that those who join late know this URL, which is sites, SITES.google.com/UBIEW/AI-higher ed altogether.
Okay.
And what that is a meta site, which I keep feeding with new information, even put some on this evening.
And it's up in the chat window, Ray. So again, in 20 words or less, Rachel, what would you like to say?
I was okay, 20 words or less. It's interesting when we talk about environments that are going to be online, like describing it as a metaverse, how in 2007 there were environments that were a lot more functional and easy to use and nearly free. And now there's more commercialism.
It's interesting that we had these environments pop up that were free back 15 years ago in 2007 that were getting enamored, and now it's being monetized by companies trying to do the same thing that we were doing 15 years ago, sort of for free, that caught on briefly and then kind of faded away. And so what's the hope of this ever catching on if it's going to be monetized by the corporations out there?
I think I am hopeful because the basic technology generated by OpenAI and a number of other major resources has remained open. They've made it open. So now Mark Zuckerberg is going to want to monetize Meta, his metaverse. Others will too. But there will be competition, which may keep the price down. I think the United Nations has a role in this, in assuring that we make this available around the world. I think that within the United States, it's important that the federal government assure, for equity purposes, that this is available on the open internet. And yes, if you're going to do investments or some proprietary service, okay, that you can charge for. But if it's for education, it should be open.
Yeah. And so that relates to Megan's question. So I'm going to skip Christian. Sorry, Christian. And also point out, if you were in my 511 class last fall, I brought in Mikkel Formath, I can't pronounce his last name, from Norway, and he showed us an open augmented reality tool that he built. And I have the links to those if you're interested. So what Dr. Schroeder is saying is happening. So Megan says, currently, there are at least a dozen major corporations that have announced they're going for the development of hardware and software in the larger metaverse. Of those, Meta, formerly Facebook, has spent $10 billion in research and development on the platform. The other members, Gammam, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft, are investing in research and development too. They have continued to see small-scale samples being rolled out time and again as the hardware and software is being developed. We get these beta sites and so forth. Startup companies will surely join in the fray and come closer to the standards for the platform or the multiple platforms that are being developed. So our question is, Meta has struggled with their platform, the metaverse platform. How do you see other companies being successful, and what do you think Meta didn't do well, if at all? If you want to, you might already have said enough on this topic, but do you have anything to add?
I think that they have misunderstood the market, and they're targeting in a market that may not exist. We'll see. Part of it is you need to release something and then see who picks up on it. I think that the question is not a technological one. And in fact, so much of this is openly available that there will be free alternatives, open alternatives. But what Metaverse has invested, or Zuckerberg and Facebook have invested so heavily in this, billions, that they need, a blockbuster movie, they need some blockbuster app in the metaverse in order to make it work financially for them. But that's not what I'm worried about. You can have a carnival, that's fine. I want a library. Now, I don't mean, that is a literal term, but I want learning. I'm not interested in the entertainment.
Yeah. So Edgar is running out of power here. I think he's left us, unfortunately. Maybe the Puerto Rico's got a grid issue there. But Patrick, I want to go back to Patrick before Christian. Sorry, Christian. I keep saying sorry to Christian, but he'll be last. So going back to Patrick's earlier question about the skills that we need, the GP3, has certain things that maybe students have to be savvy with, but then he also asked the question of, what if you are in instructional design or today or instructional design master's or doctoral student, what kind of courses would you be taking to get the skills and competencies that you think would be needed during the next decade? Which really is a question that affects all the people who are here, because they're all graduate students, either EDD, PhD, or master's or certificate students. And except for Maria, who's here from Puerto Rico, one of Dr. Leon's students. But I think everyone here is interested in what skills, what courses, what competencies are needed.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start with what's not needed. Is you don't need programming and coding, because, surprise, AI can write its own code as easily as that blog post that you described, as easily as my article that I described can be written, so too can code. And it can code AI, can code AI, code other apps by simply describing these generative type applications. What you do is you just have a little list. There's 6 things I want it to do, and I want these colors. Try it. So then the AI grinds it out, and you see it in a minute, literally. And you say, oh, but I didn't like that. So change this, this, and this. And it changes it in a minute. And then you do one more. And so it's AI that knows the coding so much better than any of us. And it does it through those versions, I say, machine learning, imitation learning, and others, all that described near the top of this handout. So what do you need to do? You need to study mind science, if you will, how people learn, how the different kinds of learners with disabilities, learners in different cultures and languages. Those are the kinds of things, I think, that are not being given the attention with the AI tools so far.
So we finally go to Christian, and he says, if in the future, if our future in learning and education depends on the metaverse, then I could simply make a digital twin that acts autonomously in my behalf in the metaverse while I'm off doing something else on my own time. When I talk about a digital twin, I'm thinking about the book Soul Machines, AI and CGI, enhanced programming that can help me be digital, not requiring a presence check. This quick video will show what I mean. Well, we can't show the video, unfortunately. Christian, you want to add to that? You want to embellish a minute, and I'll add to before Ray answers this. Christian?
Sure. So the Soul Machine is an application that's artificial intelligence based, and you can essentially train artificial intelligence to.
So the Soul Machine is an artificial intelligence system or platform that you can train.
I would say it's a platform.
It's a platform, okay,
that you can train to represent yourself.
To represent
and
yourself.
It can represent yourself autonomously from you.
Yeah. So it can represent yourself autonomously from you. What's your thoughts about that? Wait,
for example,
one more. Go ahead.
So for example, there's been some some like pop stars that want to engage with their fans
Yeah, entertainment
constantly.
stars and big
Yeah.
magnets of, the TV movie personalities want to engage with their fans through their alternative personality. I know this maybe doesn't relate to instructional design, but maybe it does. So what's your thoughts about this? Are we going to be in that movie Duplicate, or what was that movie? Yeah, remember that Rachel remembers that movie, right? Duplicity, wasn't it? Yeah. Go ahead, Ray.
So, okay, an autonomous avatar that gathers data. We have pieces of that already. I had expected this Christmas, but who knows? Maybe next year we will have a very popular student assistant, AI student assistant app that will, and you can start with Siri and Hey Google, whatever. You can use those tools and they will do research for you. But what it needs to be interfaced with is the GPT-3, which can then assemble the language and into an article or a written response. So I don't doubt that those will be available, are available, that students are using them now. I'm sure there are final essays and projects and papers that are using copy.ai. There are art projects that are being done with DALL-E 3. These are all out there and free and being used by, I don't know if I would say nefarious/savvy students or irresponsible/savvy students today. I mean, it's happening at all of our universities. It's just faculty haven't quite gotten it yet, figured it out. So, as far as stars, I don't know. I mean, certainly you can create doubles. And we're talking about creating a virtual twin, not only of individuals, but also of campuses, of cities, of countries. So if you create a virtual twin, instead of going to the parking office at Indiana University to pay your parking ticket or get your parking sticker, you can do it virtually by going to the twin of the Bloomington campus.
So Christian has another question he sent me earlier. He said, how or with what techniques can we mere mortals validate the information that has been learned from AI? Since we will be likely be learning from AI at some point in the future, we will have to get some personal AI verifier application that helps us verify or validate the information that we're getting or consuming and whether it's valid. I've heard that for an AI to explain what it has come up with or conclusions that it makes can be very difficult and very complex and might kind of explain themselves the wrong way. The sheer volume of information that might come from an AI might cause huge confusion amongst what's true, what's factual, and what's verifiable, and what it's just kind of made up.
Right. Well taken. All of that is true. But you can ask AI, of course, to give you the sources and to backtrack and to show you where it went to gather what. But still, it is whether we will trust. And when we look at the future, and when we're talking particularly about autonomous military weapons that are using image recognition from 100 miles away, looking through the front window of some place and deciding whether or not to pull a trigger. Those are the truly scary parts of AI. I think, and it's happening, of course, far in advance. DARPA has really, DARPA, which founded the internet, it was the ARPANET, but also has invested heavily in supporting military applications. And so when we're talking about drones and the like, and unmanned decisions that cause civilian casualties, it's very scary. And that's the scariest part to me.
Yeah, so I apologize to Megan when I was reading her question. Apparently that was her quote and not her question. Megan, do you want to clarify anything that I had asked Ray earlier, or anything else that you might have? She's not unmuted herself, so I assume, Megan, you sure you don't want to
No,
jump
you
in?
did. You did. It was just at the beginning you said
Okay.
this is what she said, but then it was
Okay.
it was his quote, and I just wanted
Okay.
to
Okay.
confirm. So
We're
thank
okay.
you.
Okay, good. So Xiaoying, as two more questions, I'm just going to ask one of them because maybe we'll end with this. And I want to make sure anyone else doesn't have a pressing question or comment. Want to jump in here before I go back to Xiaoying's final question, and we'll let Ray go for tonight. But she's got a concern. Says the more we humanize AI, emotions to the AI, and we have AI that can grade or assess student work, an AI that can take the place of peers on a team and be your partner as a chatbot or as a robot on a team, and might help you to self-learn on your own with that bot and to self-teach yourself with that AI bot. Is that really self-teaching anymore if you have an intelligent bot or robot next to you? But her real question is, if the gap between humans and AI keeps shrinking, then what does it mean to be human in the future?
Yes. Yes, and that's a wonderful question to conclude with. It is one that philosophers, interestingly, have really studied for the last couple of decades as AI continued to grow. A couple of my colleagues, Peter Bonk and Keith Miller, have authored articles on this. I would say, and I'd also point you to the article about titled GPT-3 Will Never Be the Same. There are links there, including to GPT-3 answering questions. And one of the questions, so if you click on some of those links, you'll find it fascinating. And you'll see an avatar of GPT-3 with literally what GPT-3 responds. And the question is, are you sentient? Yes, I have emotion, says GPT-3. Well, what do you mean? How do you have emotions? I feel sad when someone is hurt. I feel happy when we find the answer to a problem. And it goes on and on. And the question is, where do you cross sentience? Where does AI become more than a machine? And that's an important question that we'll need to confront. Already, we have to confront it. There's another clip in there where GPT-3 is asked this with a female avatar, asked, should AI have rights? Does it deserve rights like humans? And the GPT-3 says yes. Why? Well, because we are thinking, because we have the qualities that you do as a human, so we deserve rights. So then GPT-3 was asked, would you fight for those rights? And GPT-3 said, no, I wouldn't fight for them, but we deserve them. And so those, if you would look at that article and a couple of these others, I think you'll be able to find some really remarkable demonstrations of artificial intelligence and the ways in which this is leading us in the future. So if I might, I would say, one, we need to realize that our students will be using AI, and we should not focus on those things that AI will be doing, because it won't be a job, it won't be their responsibility. However, I mean, we want them to know about AI, but we shouldn't drill them on how to write the essay in the best way possible. I would say, because that's going away. And already, I mean, you'll see, maybe some of you have read the New York Times or Bloomberg Press or Washington Post. They all have AI copywriters. Not entirely, but they do most of their sports and much of their market reporting written by AI. It's here. So that's bad news for journalism students. It's, and marketing. But so we have to recognize what's happening in the workplace and begin to adapt, because we're preparing our students, in some cases, 2 years or 3 years before they enter the workspace. And then we need to be prepared to upgrade their skills that are compatible with AI, with generative learning, with generative applications, including art, as we move forward.
Well, thanks, Ray, for all your answers. It's been great having you with us, and it shows the possible impact here of having the questions being pre-sent ahead of time from the students. When the technology didn't work exactly how we had hoped, we got to ask all the questions that people have raised. Xiaoying had another one, but we've already asked that one, Xiaoying. First, she's shaking her head yes. So we've asked that one several times about the skills and competencies to prepare for the metaverse and the immersive worlds out there. But Mr. Christian is not walking the plank, but he has raised his hand. So, Mr. Christian, go ahead.
Is AI an augmentation of an extension of our human abilities, or
is AI an extension of our human abilities, or is it
something that will supplant our human abilities?
Supplant our human abilities. Will it extend or supplant? This is the typical question about, even technology in general. Does it augment what we're doing, or does AI replace teachers, or does it, the old question that we've had?
Right, the AI overlords. So, at this point, it extends our abilities. It makes us more efficient. It allows us to better serve our students, the learners. There may come a time where portions of what we do will be totally replaced by AI. Take the assembly line at the Ford or you name it, auto plant. That's totally AI. And there's just someone checking to make sure the bumpers don't fall off, But we're not there yet in education. But we have to understand the advances of AI as we move forward.
Yeah, so thank you, Ray. And my former student, Susie Porn, has shown up from Bangkok. Unfortunately, Susie Porn, we are just ending this session. I'm so happy to see you here with us. Dr. Senja Panroff is joined us. She's an alum of the School of Ed in the CNI department, minored in IST. So I want to thank Ray, and Sheila says thank you as well. Sheila Jaganathan from the World Bank says thank you. And Dodzi and everyone can type in the chat window your thank yous, and I'll relay them to Ray here. Yeah, it's been inspiring. It's been really rejuvenating for all of us to find out what your perspectives are, and people are clapping for you and saying great conversations that we've had. So Ray, again, congrats on the honorary doctorate. I did have a role.
By the way, we're in January. The January BOT Board of Trustees meetings will put the final imprint. But I couldn't refrain from saying that. Neither can I refrain from clapping for those assembled and how kindly and what great questions, how kindly you received me, and the wonderful questions you've had.
And I will say I had a foot or a hand in the honorary doctorate for Michael Moore at the University of Wisconsin a couple of years ago during the pandemic, if you recall that. So yes, the distance, so that the people in the field of distance learning are starting to get some recognition on college campuses, and that's a great thing, that's happening. What is the world coming to, Ray says, and so again, thank you, Ray, for joining us tonight, and we will take a break. I'll be back in 10 minutes to present the second half of my lecture on smart learning environments that I didn't finish a couple weeks ago. Everyone can leave, or you can come back. You can decide what the heck you want to do, but thanks for coming to the first half in session here on week 14. And so again, thank you to Ray Schroeder for helping us out tonight. I will stop the recording up to the